Good morning on this Sunday, May 19th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Atlanta will be the site of the first 2024 debate between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. Also, Georgia Republicans gather in Columbus for their annual convention, and Georgia leaders consider switching out the statue of a Confederate leader on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol with one of baseball great Hank Aaron. Melita, Phil, Theron, and Janelle are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Lots of presidential news to get to here in Georgia. We begin with the first presidential debate of 2024 between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. They will be in Atlanta at CNN on June 27th. Theron, we weren't even sure if these two would meet on the debate stage, and now we know we'll see them in June and again in September. What about the fact that the first one will be here in Georgia, here in Atlanta?
Well, if anyone has been questioning whether or not Georgia is a battleground state, I mean, the fact that the first debate, which is, by the way, the earliest it's ever been in history, in June, shows you how important Georgia is. And so let's kind of analyze it from the Biden standpoint. I was very happy to see the president come out in a very, enthusiastic video. Janelle and I was just talking about it, basically saying, hey, bring it on. And I think that's the strategy of the campaign, because they really believe that once they are head to head, they'll be able to talk about the difference in philosophies, but more importantly, he'll talk a lot about his record and what he's done. Now, if you're Trump, and I like the president said, hey, we hear you're available on Wednesday. I mean, that's just reminding people that we're dealing with a former president right now who's actually on trial. And so I think that Trump is going to probably come with a lot of his same tactics, try to interrupt the president. And the only thing about it now, if you're in the campaign, Lori, is that with it being so soon in June, and I think a second one has been planned in September, you want to win that first one. I mean, President Biden's got to come out and be strong and very defiant as far as with his record. And then basically, more importantly, make sure that he talks about things that people can feel and relate to, and just remind them of his record. But I think it's really also good for Atlanta, but it's also good for CNN. The fact that they are actually hosting this debate, I think the network would definitely get a lot of publicity on that.
Janelle, I mean, there's a lot at stake for both of them, but talk about the timing, because we'll more than likely have a verdict in this New York trial. There's talk about will Trump have an ankle bracelet? There's there's those types of things that are being pushed out there. But talk about the timing and what President Biden will talk about with the former president.
If President Trump is on house arrest, he's going to win. I think the more and more they keep pushing him in that direction, the more and more his base gets excited, right? I feel like this is a good thing. I'm glad we're having a debate. I don't like that we didn't have one in the primary. I really feel like if we're going to debate, we need to debate in every stage of this. That being said, there's two things that I think each of them have to do in order to have a good night. Biden has to be coherent and convincing, and Trump has to be inclusive of the entire Republican Party, and he has to be policy focused. If he goes on there and start getting into his emotions and the grievances and all that stuff, he's going to turn off a portion of the Republican base. However, if he talks about policy, his plans, what he's done, what he plans to do, how he's going to fix things, I think he's going to have a good night. So I'm excited. I wish there was an audience, but, I still know there's not going to be one. But I think it's going to be a good one.
We'll see. Phil, y'all can weigh in on the debate also, but I also want to talk about the New York Times polling that was released this week, which shows that President Biden in trouble in several battleground states, including Georgia. Not many folks believe the numbers that former President Trump could be up by 10 points in Georgia. What do you make of the crosstabs, Phil?
Well, let me just first comment on the debate. I think it's great. I agree that it's good for Atlanta, and with CNN having such low ratings, that'll boost them for a little while. Of course, it's rigged. They have two liberal questioners, but Trump can handle that. And I think that I wish the Trump team had insisted on a drug test. He's going to be juiced up like he was for the State of the Union. So, but Trump can handle it. I think it's good. But the polling numbers are very interesting. I look at the Real Clear Politics numbers, which is, of course, an average of all of the major pollsters, including Insider Advantage, I might add. And I do think it's a little high for Georgia, to be honest with you. I think it's more like maybe a week or two ago, it was up 5 points. I think that's more in the realm home. There's no question there's been a swing of voters. If you look at the 5 swing states where Trump is ahead right now as we tape, and I think in Georgia, you're seeing a hemorrhaging of Jewish voters. I've even seen this in Sandy Springs, which has a heavy Jewish population. A lot of these folks are maybe moderates or even Democrats, and they've abandoned Biden because of his anti-Israel stance.
Well, Melita, I checked the Real Clear Politics average here in Georgia. President Biden at 44 to former President Trump's 49.
Well, I really wonder about polls because on Tuesday in Maryland, there was a Senate race in the Democratic primary where everybody thought they were tied. And the billionaire man lost by 10 points to the woman. And so I think we're in some territory that not even the pollsters fully understand. And so the vote that counts is in November, and we're a long way from that. But let's go back to this debate, because it's going to be very, very interesting to see, people talk about the age, but the age is not an issue because these two guys are so similar in age. And really, when you have Trump talking about Hannibal Lecter being a nice guy, he's going to have to, his campaign is going to have to be very careful about how he's prepped. And the other thing is that the microphones will shut off when they go over time limits in this debate. Now, I know the Trump people are talking about this is rigged, but he wrote the book on the art of the deal. So if he didn't like the terms of the debate, he should have negotiated, since he says he's such a good negotiator. I think Biden was right. Bring it on. It's going to be a very interesting night.
All right, well, I'll have our popcorn out there. And Janelle, President Biden, of course, at Morehouse College Sunday for commencement, but he also made the rounds on Black radio here in Atlanta, telling listeners that former President Trump hurt Black people every chance he got, from Black unemployment to, quote, his botched COVID-19 response leaving Black people dead and Black-owned businesses shuttered. Ooh. Let's talk about that assessment.
Well, I mean, it's classic Biden. When I first saw it, I was thinking, just shut up. That was the first thing that came to my mind. But here's the thing. The reason why he can keep doing this is because it's working, and it's working for Black Democrats. It's not pulling in Black Republicans at all. It's repelling us because we're the individuals who believe that we can do all things through Christ. We don't have to have the white man on our neck. We don't believe that we can't get through, or that I have to get permission to be successful in life. And when you make comments like this, it's saying to the Black community that the whole concept of working twice as hard to get half as much, the whole concept of the white man has to approve it for you to be successful, all of that stuff, it's pushing that narrative. And it makes me believe that people are programmed to believe that, because that's why this is working. It's driving people to the polls when he says things like this. It's not about President Trump doing anything singular for the Black community. It's about President Trump, or any president, doing what's necessary for the country, creating opportunity for all of us, and then we can move forward. But when you keep singling us out like this, it's very low vibrational, it's very low level, it makes it seem like we're not intellectual, and we are. We can have business conversations, talk to Black people about policy like how you talk to every other white person. I don't get it, but maybe it works. Maybe Thayer, you can explain why he keeps doing this.
Thayer, weigh in here.
So first of all, it was a 10-minute interview. All right, so let our viewers know that that was the part that the media decided to focus on, and I'm glad he said it. And I'm gonna tell you why I'm glad he said it. But I encourage people to listen to the 10-minute interview. And Laura, you put a couple of these things on the screen, but he talked about Black unemployment, insurance rates going up during the Trump administration, Trump's tax plan, reinforced discrimination. I mean, these are all things. COVID-19, people were dying, and that was true because we had a former president who refused to show just a little bit of ounce of empathy, that people literally were dying, and he refused to follow the science. Now let's get into what Janelle was talking about. Look, I don't have a problem with the president saying what he said, because the president knows what he's about to embark upon, right? You're going over to Morehouse College, and you're going to be talking to some of the best and brightest, Morehouse men and the Black men in the country and their families. And so you can't go into that not necessarily focusing on what Trump didn't do. Now what he's got to do, which I think he will do, and he would, by the time we're taping now, we haven't heard the speech, is that he will reinforce the longevity, the consistency, the unwavering support that the Democratic Party has had to Black people. And here's my thing: I challenge Republicans. Republicans. And Lord knows, Janelle, you and Kelvin, y'all went out there and you saw what the Republican base did. The Republican base did not want a credible African-American black man to be their U.S. Senate nominee. So you have work to do. But what we're saying is that until the Republican Party show us and answer these questions that the president opposed, then you're going to continue to see overwhelmingly numbers that they're going to continue to support this Democrat. So I'm totally fine with what he said. And lastly, you got to say it was on V103. You can't go on V103 on the big ticket show and not bring some.
Know your audience.
And they got to know your audience. And so I think he made news, but I encourage people to listen to it in its totality because he talked about a lot of other important things as well.
Phil.
Well, I think it's very divisive. Biden has always pulled this, oh, y'all are going to be put in chains if you vote for Republicans. And, this business of, white man's got you down. This is not the 1950s anymore in Georgia. And we've got a lot of opportunity. Janelle pointed that out. Everybody's got a chance at doing something in this country. And so, again, I hope he doesn't continue to pander. I would hope the Morehouse crowd would not buy a lot of this pandering. I think that everybody's an individual and there ought to be talking policy. Both candidates ought to be talking policies. But I think that when Biden is just doing the divisive line, the Democrats try to pit male against female, black against white, Hispanic versus white. This has got to stop. We've got to be more unifying.
Melita, quickly.
Well, quickly, Biden's policy talk will be interesting because it is the Trump tax policies which favored the wealthiest 5% and discriminated against all the others down that ballot, which greatly harmed black and white Americans.
I'm going to give you each 20 seconds. How about that?
Yeah, okay. I just think it's important to note that the one policy that he's not talking about is funding HBCUs, which is what President Trump did. So while we're all talking about all the wonderful things, he was the only person that released black men out of prison and funded HBCUs while he's at a HBCU. As an HBCU graduate, I'm telling you that is all that he needs to be talking about.
Darren, 20 seconds.
First of all, we know the news that he made this week, but basically reclassifying marijuana, right? So that's something that he's talking about. But how more supportive can you be at HBCU when you're the commencement speaker at HBCU? And I will put his funding and his commitments to HBCUs against Trump. Now, Trump did give some money, but Biden has done way more. And then the last thing I would just say, a lot of people say this, Phil and Janelle, where's the lie? I mean, where's the lie in what the president said? These are all things that happened under the Trump administration, and the black people suffer, and brown people.
White people suffered right along with everybody else.
White people need to speak up on a radio station talking about that.
And also, let me just say real quick, Biden is the one that has got the hugest tax increase that he's promised, whereas the Democrats want to stop and end the Trump tax cuts. That's crazy.
I gotta leave it there, guys. I have to leave it there.
$8 trillion.
Up next,
We're about to put him in prison.
Georgia Republicans gather for their annual convention, but several notables are missing.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Georgia Republicans gathering for their annual conventions in Columbus this week. Phil, how divided is the party when leaders like Governor Brian Kemp are a no-show? And I understand you and Janelle are not going either.
No, but it's not that divided. There's factions, just like the Democratic Party has its factions. And this is the modern age of politics where Governor Kemp has his machine, and rightly so. The state party has its machine. They're all fundraising, just like the Democrats are doing. There's nothing wrong. I think the great unifier, and I've said this before, is this is not the liberalism we used to experience in Georgia maybe 15 years ago. This is far left radical stuff that the Democrat Party has. That's the great unifier. That's why the polls show that Trump is up in Georgia by 5 or 6 points. This is why you had the last Democrat Supreme Court nominee, when asked to define a woman, couldn't do it. You've got all of these very radical policies, open borders, and so the Republicans are going to be unified in November.
Melita.
Well, it is at least interesting that the first vice chair has been removed after voting as a convicted felon 9 times when he wasn't supposed to. So at least that divisive issue amongst Republicans has been solved.
Everybody wanted him out.
Okay. Yes, the party's divided. I'm going to be honest about it, because not that you're not, Phil, because I agree with what you're saying, but it is divided, and I'm going to tell you why it's divided. It's divided not because we just have different factions. We should have different factions. I like that we have discourse. The problem is when there's one faction that says that we don't want the other faction, or says things like, we don't need you, we don't want you to vote, you're a rhino, get out of here, you're not welcomed, and then when they don't show up, you're wondering why the turnout is so low. We got to stop with my perspective is the only perspective that's right. If you're going to have different perspectives, highlight them both and have educated conversations around it. Welcome everyone, and we'll be fine.
All right, I'm going to move on. Georgia's primary is Tuesday. Early turnout much lower compared to 2 years ago, which isn't surprising. Let's turn to Georgia's U.S. Supreme Court race. Theron, where many are surprised at how former Congressman John Barrow has made the issue of abortion the center of his campaign.
You know this, Lori, and most of y'all on the panel, I know Phil knows this. I grew up in Athens, Georgia. You know, John Barrow was my county commissioner. I remember meeting him in 1992 when he knocked at my door, and he was very surprised to see this prominent African-American family who pull themselves up by the bootstraps, and can be good Democrats, right? But no, look. Congressman Barrow, I worked for him on the Hill, great man, and I think he's doing exactly what he should be doing. That is that he's putting reproductive rights, a woman's right to choose, abortion on the ballot. And until he's proven otherwise, until the law says that he's not right, I think he's going to continue to do that. Secondly, I think that, look, his opponent, Justice Pinson, who I hear is a good man, I don't know him, I think I maybe met him one time, refuses to debate John Barrow. And I think the reason he refuses to debate John Barrow is because I am rolling with John, because I don't think there's anybody that knows state law and federal law better than John Barrow. Now, does this equate to him getting the African-American turnout and the women to turn out for him to be victorious on Tuesday? We'll have to see. But he's raising money. He's pushing back on anybody who contradicts that he's running on this issue. And I think it's to me, the right thing to do to not only try to win, but also make sure that women understand that he's putting this on the ballot.
Phil, Governor Kemp weighed in to support incumbent Justice Pinson.
Well, and that's only natural because he appointed Pinson. But what Theron isn't telling you is the fact that the Judicial Qualifications Commission sent him a private letter, sent John Barrow a letter saying, stop it, you're violating the bar ethics, you're violating state law, and you cannot go into specific cases that may come up in front of you in the Supreme Court. Well, what Barrow did, just released it to the media, and so I think it's a disgrace. I like John personally, but he's disgraced himself, and I think that Pinson has a good record. He's a Federalist, he's a Constitutionalist, and I think Pinson will pull it out in the primary.
Melita.
Well, there's a certain amount of hypocrisy involved when you don't want people to talk about federal issues or issues that may come before the court. When the Republicans have spent 3 decades of putting forward Federalist Society nomination lists at both the state and federal level. And it's gotten to the point where the courts are not as respected as they once were, primarily because you can predict how someone will vote by who appointed them.
What's wrong with the Federalists? They're for the Constitution. The left has their organization. So that's America. That's politics.
All right, another high-profile race that could be decided Tuesday is the race for DeKalb CEO. Theron, you're up on the issues facing DeKalb County. 3 Democratic candidates are vying for the job. Now, I've worked with Commissioner Steve Bradshaw in the past. He runs a solid campaign. He's former military. He's raised the most money. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and full disclosure, I do represent DeKalb County, so I'm going to try to do an analysis, all right? But no, I've had the honor and pleasure of working with all 3 of these commissioners. Larry Johnson, who I think we also mentioned, commissioner, his platform is experience, innovation, results you can see. Steve Bradshaw, who you mentioned, proven leadership for a safer, cleaner, more inclusive DeKalb. And then Lorraine Cochran-Johnson talks about a representative to all DeKalb County residents within a track record of success. Look, you talked about the money. Steve Bradshaw did raise the most money overall, but Larry Johnson raised the most this quarter. And we don't know what Lorraine Cochran-Johnson has raised because as we tape, she has not filed her disclosure for this quarter. I think there was an ethics complaint filed against her. So it's going to be about turnout. It's going to be about who can turn out their base. But then one of the things I think is interesting, I know Janelle knows, is that I thought it very interesting that Lorraine Cochran-Johnson sponsored and was a part of a Republican event in DeKalb County where it was a lot of MAGA election deniers on the flyer.
Oh, you're not going to do that.
No, it was.
Lorraine.
No, I'm not doing it to her. I'm just saying. But in a county that is overwhelmingly Democratic, and I don't know if it's a strategy to get crossover voters, but that was something that I thought was very interesting.
Janelle?
I was actually at that event because Kelvin and I were the guest guest speakers. So, and it was not a whole bunch of MAGA. I mean, it was a mixed crowd. There were just as many Democrats there as there were Republicans. I thought that was exciting. I thought that the other candidates should have been there too if they wanted that vote, specifically because Republicans right now have a higher turnout in DeKalb County than Democrats on this when it comes to this particular race in this primary. So it looks like she's doing the right thing because Republicans are going to vote for her. So, and it's not because she's Republican, she's fair.
No, I don't think that's right. No, not more Republicans are voting in DeKalb County than Democrats.
There has been. Yeah, go look at the numbers.
No, it's
we
been
talked
roughly
about
25,000 people that have voted.
numbers.
It's not more Republican voters.
Go to GeorgiaVotes.com. I would
the
tell all
numbers.
readers.
None of DeKalb
We
County.
talked about it already.
It won't end up that way, I tell you that. This is
All
a
right,
very
well, let me
Democratic.
wrap it. We'll look at the numbers and come back next week. Coming up, some Georgia leaders are looking to replace a statue of Alexander Stephens on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol with a statue of Hank Aaron. We'll discuss next.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Some Republican leaders say they want to unite behind one of Georgia's favorite sons, putting a statue of baseball great Hank Aaron on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol, replacing the statue of Confederate leader Alexander Stephens. Let's see, who have I not called on and who has behaved today? Melita.
Well, I think this is a grand idea. I happened to be at Fulton County Stadium when he hit number 715.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's a brilliant idea. My only reservation is to make sure that the Aaron family, and specifically his widow, Billy Aaron, is approving of this, and I haven't seen that in any of the media coverage. There was a move a few years ago to name a bridge on an interstate for him, and she objected to that at the time. So as long as she's for it, I'm way for it.
Phil.
Well, I'm a Clarence Thomas fan, the U.S. Supreme Court Justice, the second black that ever served on the nation's highest court. The Democrats have disrespected him for some reason. We want to get a statue in the Capitol, and that didn't work. So I think it's time now to promote Clarence Thomas.
So, Theron, is this the kind of debate we're going to be seeing on this issue?
Well, look, it's what Melita said. You know, until we hear from the Aaron family, particularly Billy Aaron, his widow, the late Hank Aaron, I am kind of, cautiously optimistic about the intent of it. I mean, look, we're not going to be against Hank Aaron getting his due. He's a Georgian. But also, we had this conversation where there's been talk about the late Congressman John Lewis being honored at the Capitol as well. And so I do think that, we can't be against the intent, but I think that we got to wait to hear what the family says. But, Hank Aaron deserves it, and the family deserves it if it happens.
So you're against Clarence Thomas?
We just
So no, I'm not against Clarence Thomas. Look, I have some very strong concerns about Clarence Thomas sort of plight to raising to be a U.S. A Supreme Court judge, but I also feel I have some very concerns about his recent behavior and his wife's behavior. And so, as a person who
he's a conservative, and you don't
no,
like that.
but the behavior,
Well,
what
I mean,
she's doing, she's on investigation, things that are going on. So I'm never going to be against. But I think how he has refused to acknowledge certain things that directly impacted his success and to just totally ignore it. And affirmative action, we could talk about that another day. So I'm not for it. I just think that there's a lot of other Georgians out there that we can honor other than Clarence Thomas.
Janelle.
Yeah, I like Clarence. I like Hank Aaron as well. I think this is good. I wish we can give our Republicans some credit. I know it's really, really hard because now we got to wait on the wife. I'm pretty sure they've done that, but I get it, right? I think this is good. I think it's their way of saying that if you want to make it a big deal about the statues, then we'll replace it with someone that everyone can get behind, and that's just a smart thing to do.
All right. Well, it may be back to the drawing board when it comes to a new Fulton County jail, after state lawmakers hinted they won't back a local sales tax to pay for it. A new jail would cost almost $2 billion. The question is, the million-dollar question, right? How do you pay for it? Phil?
Well, I'm glad that they're revisiting the issue because this should have been done years ago. We've talked about a bond issue in the past. We've talked about cutting various parts of the bloated. Everybody can find something in a bloated county government like Fulton County. So, I'm glad they're discussing it.
They're discussing it, Melita, but what are the solutions here?
Well, it sounds like a new jail has to be the solution because renovating the old jail would cost more than the new jail. And so, practically speaking, a new jail is in the future of Fulton County taxpayers. It's a matter of how they take the money out of your wallet.
Right.
Yep. Looks like we're going to have to pay for it one way or another.
No property tax hike.
We need
Fulton,
a new jail.
Yeah,
We need a new jail.
we're Fulton, so we know. All right. Coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Oh, you're fine. All right, Janelle, we'll start with you.
All right, don't forget to vote May 21st. Make sure you vote. Check out my podcast, Candidate Conversations, that I'm doing. I have Ricky Mason with Cobb Sheriff and Valencia Stovall. I interviewed them recently, so that's on YouTube. As well as a shout out to Philip Ortree. He's a retired APD officer who watches the show, so shout out to him. And in small business, shout out to Joy Zager Insurance. Go check out joyzagerinsurance.com.
All right, I agree with Janelle. Everybody, make sure you go out and vote. It's a very important election. Fulton County elections are going on as well. My first winner is going to be Beverly Johnson, who I've known since I was like a middle school student, but she was just recently named in the interim director role of the Fenner Institute of Leadership Development at UGA. And also I want to make the 1974 Clark College graduating class. They're celebrating 50 years at Clark Lane University. And also, you'll be happy to know this, Janelle and Phil, I actually went to the home of Jeff Sprecher and Kelly Loeffler. I was able to get in. Everything was fine.
Republican home.
What were you expecting?
But I was there. Hold on, I was there for a good cause, so I want to protect myself. But no, shout out to the Children's Healthcare. No. I'm about to give them a shout out. They were basically hosting Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, huge Spalding, and they were honoring Levette Russell. And I met good people like Karen Prost and others there. So just shout out to that organization and all the great work they're doing to make sure that hospital continues to get the funds. And by the way, we donate it, so we support this
Well,
group.
that's great. None of us can disagree with that.
There you go.
Phil.
No, and I know you'll agree with, coincidentally, my winner is Kelly Loeffler in her Greater Georgia. She is really doing the work that political parties ought to be doing, and that is targeting and registering and encouraging turnout. And another winner is prominent Atlanta attorney Randy Evans. He is Newt Gingrich's one-time attorney, still may be. He has been active in the Republican Party. He's been named the executive director of the Republican National Convention Platform Committee.
Congratulations to him. Belita.
Well, my first winner is Senators Sonia Halpern and Representative Dr. Michelle Au, who both delivered commencement addresses at their alma maters this week. And a shout out to peach growers because they've got a great crop.
Yeah, that's what we hear. Well, great. Everybody make it a great week. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.